Ever notice how family debates can get so heated that somebody just says something that makes you think, did they really just say that out loud?
Yeah, all the time.
Well, it's kind of the energy coming from Telangana these days right now.
Right.
So we're going to do a deep dive on a situation with their Chief Minister, Revanth Reddy, who's said some things that have basically put him in the spotlight of the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
It's not just your run-of-the-mill political back and forth. This seems to be something that's impacting how our system is supposed to work,
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely. And what's really interesting and kind of what drew the court's attention to this whole thing is this very strong statement by the chief minister. He basically said that even if a bunch of MLAs from the BRS party, the opposition, decided to suddenly jump ship and join Congress, there wouldn't be a need for by-elections.
Oh, yeah, that was on March 27th, wasn't it?
Yeah.
During a session of the Assembly.
Right, in the Assembly. It wasn't just some offhand comment at a rally or something.
Yeah, it was a really formal setting.
Yeah.
You can picture it, the usual political to and fro, and then boom, this statement that just like ignores a key part of how our elections work.
Exactly.
It makes you wonder, what's the strategy behind something so bold?
Well, the background here, like it is so often in politics, is power,
Right.
Shifting alliances, shifting loyalties. You see MLAs switching parties. And that always raises these questions of who are they really representing?
Yeah, do those voters get a say again?
Exactly. And so when the chief minister just comes out and says point blank, even if a bunch of these guys defect, we're not having by-elections, that gets people riled up, especially when you think about our legal and constitutional rules.
Right.
It's like, think of the 10th schedule as the rule book for the game.
Yeah.
You can't just have players switching teams in the middle of the match. That messes up the whole thing.
And this went all the way up to the Supreme Court. This wasn't just something that people talked about for a day and forgot.
Oh, no, this is a big deal.
2 judge bench justices, Gavai and Massey, and they were pretty clear in their statement that's been all over the news.
I saw that.
It was like, if this is said on the floor of the House, your honorable chief minister is making a mockery of the 10th schedule.
Wow.
That's serious, coming from the highest court in the country.
Yeah, it cuts right to the chase, right to the heart of the matter. The 10th schedule is the anti-defection law. It's there for a reason.
Right.
It's supposed to stop this kind of instability that happens when you have people constantly flipping parties. It lays down the rules when someone can be disqualified for switching sides.
Okay.
So when the chief minister says, even if we have a lot of defections, no by-elections, it's like he's directly going against the whole point of that constitutional safeguard.
So the Supreme Court isn't just like responding to a politician having a strong opinion here.
No, not at all.
They're concerned that he said this in an official assembly proceeding,
Yeah.
Like he's downplaying a crucial constitutional process.
Yeah,
It's different from saying something at a rally, isn't it?
absolutely. There's a world of difference. The Supreme Court actually made a distinction between saying something inside the assembly and saying something out in public.
Right.
Like, at a rally, they actually use the red time pass for those rally remarks,
Right.
implying that they're more off the cuff.
Right. More casual.
Yeah, not so legally binding, but when you say something on the floor of the House, that's on the record.
That's official.
That's official. It carries weight. It can be used as evidence in a court case.
Okay.
So for the chief minister to say this in that kind of setting, well, the court took that seriously.
Yeah.
For our listeners out there, it shows you how much weight is given to words spoken in those official capacities. You have to be careful what you say.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's one thing to just be talking politics, but it's another to seem like you're ignoring the rules of the game
Yeah.
from inside the very system that's supposed to uphold those rules.
Right.
We mentioned earlier that the Supreme Court was already dealing with a case about MLAs switching parties. How does Reddy's statement fit into that situation?
This is the key connection. So the court was looking at this petition from BRS leaders, right? KT Rama Rao and Patti Kaushik Reddy.
Right.
They wanted the court to tell the Telangana Assembly Speaker to do something about the MLAs who had already left BRS for Congress.
Okay.
So this case is about defections that already happened, right?
Right.
And then the chief minister makes this statement about future defections not leading to by-elections. It's almost like he's trying to get ahead of the court.
It's like he's saying it doesn't even matter what you decide.
Exactly, like it's a done deal, or he's downplaying the importance of the issue that the court's actively considering.
Right.
It's like throwing gasoline on a fire that's already burning.
Right. And it wasn't even just this one comment that got their attention, right?
No.
The Supreme Court mentioned another instance of what they called an unfamiliar statement from the chief minister.
Right.
Something about bail timelines for different politicians.
Right. Yeah, that's right. The court brought up this time when Chief Minister Reddy had questioned why BRS leader K. Kavitha got bail faster than Delhi Deputy Chief Minister Manish Sisodia.
Right.
And he also questioned why Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal was still in detention. Now, it's important to understand, the court didn't say whether his points were right or wrong.
They just didn't like that he said it.
They didn't comment on the facts of the matter, but they pointed it out as another example of someone high up in the government,
Right.
making statements that sound like they're questioning or even commenting on court cases that are still going on. And that might be seen as disrespecting the independence of the courts, which raises the issue of the separation of powers.
So it wasn't about what he said. It was about him saying it.
Maybe the context wasn't right, or a chief minister publicly questioning the courts. No, it didn't sit well with them.
Yeah, there were some big names in law involved in this, weren't there?
Oh, yeah.
Senior advocate Aryama Sundaram representing the BRS leaders. And then you had Mukul Rohatgi representing the Telangana Assembly Speaker. How did this all play out in the courtroom?
Well, Sundaram, representing those BRS leaders, he was the one who told the Supreme Court about Reddy's remarks about no by-elections.
Okay.
Basically saying, look, this just proves that he doesn't care about the rules on defections. Now, Rohatgi, on the other hand, who was representing the Assembly Speaker, didn't really react too much to these comments from the chief minister.
Like he didn't know what to say?
Yeah, from what I read, he didn't give a counterargument or an explanation right away.
So then the Supreme Court directly addressed Rohatgi with a message for the chief minister, right?
Yes, they were very clear. They told him to tell the chief minister that he shouldn't be making statements that undermine the 10th schedule.
Right.
And they also gave this little reminder, about their power. They said that they might not immediately issue contempt notices.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean they're powerless. And they made that very clear.
So what's a contempt notice?
Basically, it's like the Supreme Court saying, we think you've done something that ignores the Constitution or disrespects this court.
Okay.
And we want you to explain yourself. And if we're not happy with your explanation, there might be penalties.
That's serious stuff.
Yeah, even the hint of it is serious.
So the Supreme Court warning him, instead of going straight to a contempt notice, was them being cautious, right?
I think it was a calculated move. They're giving the chief minister and the state a chance to realize, hey, this is serious. You need to change your tune.
Right.
But the message is loud and clear. The Supreme Court takes its job seriously.
They are the guardians of the Constitution.
Exactly.
This whole thing, while it's happening in Telangana with Chief Minister Reddy and his statements, it really is about something bigger, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
It's about how our democracy is supposed to function and whether people in power are actually accountable.
Right. When you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, this whole thing shows us the balance of power in our democracy. The Constitution has these rules to make sure things are stable and fair. And when people in positions of power seem to disregard these principles, it makes you question the whole rule of law.
Right. Is anyone following the rules?
Exactly. And the fact that the Supreme Court got involved shows how important their role is. They make sure that everyone's playing by the rules, the executive branch. Everyone has to stay within the lines drawn by the Constitution.
So to sum up this deep dive, what would you say is the main thing our listeners should take away from this whole Supreme Court reaction to the chief minister?
Well, the Supreme Court clearly disapproved of what the chief minister said about defections and by-elections.
Right. They were not happy.
They made it very clear that, especially in a formal setting like the assembly, those kinds of statements are basically challenging the 10th schedule of the Constitution and the anti-defection law.
Okay.
This whole thing is a reminder that the judiciary is there to protect the Constitution. They make sure that politics doesn't override those fundamental constitutional principles. It really highlights the tension that can exist, between what politicians want and what the Constitution allows.
That's an interesting point. So something for everyone to think about, what does this whole back and forth between the Supreme Court and the chief minister tell us about the clash that can happen between political strategy and actually governing within the rules?
Right.
And how do these kind of public statements from politicians affect how much people trust the system? Our political institutions, the rule of law, it's a complex situation and something to keep in mind as we see how things unfold in Indian politics and the role the courts play in upholding the core principles of our nation.
Definitely. It's something to watch.
For sure.